Tab Prince might have one of the shortest NASCAR careers in history. Only 18 laps into his NASCAR journey, he lost his life. But just because he had a short career in NASCAR, it doesn't make his story any less interesting. This is the story of Talmadge Prince. But right before we get into the video, make sure you guys leave a like if you enjoy and subscribe if you haven't already. But anyways, with all that said, let's get right into the video. Talmadge, or Tab, was born in 1937 in Alabama. Around the time he was graduating high school, Tab started to race late model sportsmen and sprint cars, a hobby he'd carry on for a decade. At the same time, he started going to college at the University of Alabama and got married. It's also said that he was a talented musician and a pilot. So it seemed like Tab was a busy and smart young man. As if he didn't have enough going on, he'd pursue his first business, a company called PBR Electronics. Throw in a couple of kids, and he's got enough going on. Prince had apparently invented some type of electronic device that gave him the money to do what he loved to do, race cars. He maintained his simple but busy lifestyle for about a decade, running his business, being a father, and racing when he had time in northern Alabama. So I'm not sure exactly what happened in Tab's life, but it seemed to all change at once. In 1969, he sold PBR Electronics to get into the car dealership business. This business venture would result in him moving states. It's unclear when he and his first wife separated, but he also married his second wife that same year. The drastic change in his life in 1969 at 31 years old seems odd at first, but it opened the door he always wanted, to race in NASCAR. It was in 1969 when he joined forces with Bill Hodges, his partner at his new car dealership. The two would become proud 50-50 owners of a Chrysler and Plymouth dealership in Dublin, Georgia. Although his main focus was his dealership, Prince held other business interests in North Carolina and back in Alabama. Soon after this transition in life, Tab made another big purchase, a Daytona from James Hilton. Hilton at this time had finished in the Cup Series points twice and had won Rookie of the Year honors. Although he hadn't won a race yet, he was a very respectable driver. But this purchase was an obvious move by Prince to race in the Daytona 500, the biggest stock car race in the world. Obviously, this was a huge jump from local short tracks. I mean, Prince was passionate about racing, and he seemed like he was a pretty successful businessman, so it makes sense. And there would be nothing more poetic for a Chrysler dealership owner to drive a Chrysler in the Daytona 500. But to race in the Daytona 500, you have to qualify for the event. But the Daytona 500 isn't like any other event. The Daytona 500 hosts two qualifying races, the twins, that set the field. Although at the time you had a couple of more chances to make the race after the qualifying races, the twins set the majority of the field. And there were 60 drivers trying to make a 40-car field, meaning one in every 3 drivers were sent home. By just making the event, you would receive at least $1,000 in prize money, plus sponsorship dollars. Beyond this, it's a prestigious event. Our driver was slated to roll off in 11th place, putting him in a great position to make the field. The Charger Daytona, sponsored by his dealership and owned by the driver, just needed to hold on to track position to solidify his place in the Daytona 500. Not to mention the driver had just celebrated his 32nd birthday. Everything was looking up for Tab in his first career start, trying to make the biggest race of his life. But suddenly, 18 laps into the second qualifying race, everything went wrong. Prince's engine blew in turn 1. Oil went everywhere, and as a result, his car slid sideways. The cars behind Tab started sliding too, including Bill Seifert, who slid in the oil and lost control of his car. The front of Bill's car hit the driver's side door of Prince's car at 165 miles per hour. The car went ablaze. Another car slid into the melee, but Prince was already gone. He was killed instantly. Track physician Dr. Monaco stated that the driver was killed instantly from a broken back and a compressed spinal cord. Other reports loosely state a broken neck. Seifert, despite suffering a concussion and bruises, was back on track at Richmond in March. The race would be under yellow for 13 laps before resuming to green, as if nothing happened. Prince's death was the first during a Grand National race at Daytona, and certainly wouldn't be the last. Billy Wade had lost his life at the Speedway during a tire test a few years prior, but Prince's was different. It wasn't necessarily less tragic, but 20,000 people witnessed the event live, a first for the Grand National Series at the track. Before it was determined an engine was to blame, allegations surfaced that there was debris all over the track. Engine wreckage, tire chunks, and a 4-foot-long piece of tailpipe littered the track. It turned out there was debris, but the officials denied it had anything to do with Prince's accident, and that the engine and oil alone was to blame. Tab was buried in his longtime home, Alabama. 7 months later, his second wife, Nell, had a son, who she named Tab. Apparently, Tab had been separated from his second wife for a while before his death, so I don't think this was his son. But his 2 children from his first marriage would carry on his legacy. Tab's car was in his second wife's family's garage, where neighborhood kids would come over and look at it and tell the story of Prince. He was a smart businessman, musically gifted, a pilot, and had a passion for racing. His businesses funded his racing journey. It's hard to speak of Tab's future in NASCAR, but his passion can't be questioned. He may not have been the next Junior Johnson, but I wish he could have spent more time living his dream. For every NASCAR legend, there are 100 people just like Tab Prince. Just regular, race car loving people who just want to race. Although the dream may be far-fetched for the rest of us, Prince did reach his dream. Unfortunately, just a few days after his 32nd birthday, he was taken far too soon. So I thought that was a great way to end the video, but I came across this forum with a man selling Prince's car that had been pieced back together. Now, I know it's controversial to some, but I do want to go over this. There is a side of the community that believes that cars involved in fatal accidents should be out of the public eye in peace, and there's another side that thinks it's a piece of history and that the car should be displayed. Then there is another part of the community that gets an odd feeling when looking at a car someone lost their life in. Regardless, someone claimed to have it, and apparently had James Hilton himself identify the car. There's an interesting discussion debating whether it's the car, what had been replaced, and even a ship of Theseus sort of debate. This is the last I can find of the car, so if you're interested, there's some homework for you. Anyway, I hope you guys did enjoy the video. I definitely enjoyed getting into this story. I felt like I was able to find more about his background and actually who he was, so let me know how you like that down in the comments down below. And make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. That's it from me. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.